Back to another Learning Java tutorial. Last week we focused on learning how to install Java IntelliJ and created our first program, Hello World. We're going to go a little bit more in depth this week. We're going to talk about primitive types. We're going to talk a little bit about objects. We're going to talk about storing data inside of Java, and we're going to talk about pulling out that data and reusing it again. So let's dive into it. I've already created a new project called MadLibs with a MadLibs class, and we have our main method. So first, let's talk about the primitive types. Our first primitive type that we're going to talk about is an int. An int is a number. It's a primitive data type, like I said, and it's also known as an integer. These can hold non-fractional numbers up to a specific size. Let's not worry about that too much, but it's probably bigger than we're going to have to worry about for a little while. The other primitive types that we have that hold numbers are bytes. These are very, very small. These can only take up 8 bits of memory. So when we're trying to save memory, we can use something such as a byte. We have a short, which is also smaller than an integer. We have a long, which is bigger than an integer if we need something that is larger. We then have a float. Float holds floating point numbers. We have a double, which holds double precision numbers such as 12.12. We have a Boolean, which is a true or false value. It's either true or false. There's no in between. And finally, we have a char, which is essentially just a character. So we can do something such as char c equals a. And what that's going to do is it's going to instantiate a new char with the variable name c, and it's going to put a inside of that. So we can test this by writing system.out.print c. And if we run this, we should see the letter a, or the char a, printed to the screen. Cool. So now you can see how we actually store data inside of Java. We instantiate a new variable, name it, and then give it the value we want to store. We can do the same thing like with an integer, int number equals 1. And then we could also do like double number 2 equals 12.0. And now if we print these out, and if we remember from the last video, if we want to print these on 2 separate lines, we'll actually do system.out.println instead. It'll make it a little bit easier to read. So if we run this now, we should have 1 and 12. Great. So why don't we use what we're learning here to write a little bit of a program? So we're going to write our own MadLib. If you're unfamiliar with MadLibs, you are asked for a word, a number, a verb, a noun, etc., and you supply that, and it will create a paragraph with your user input. So we're also going to be learning about how to take in user input so we can put it into our MadLib. So let's start with that. We're going to be instantiating an object called a scanner. So we can do something such as scanner equals new scanner. We're going to do parentheses system.in. So you'll see that these are both red. A scanner is an object. It is not built into Java core. So what you need to do is import it into our program. So we'll go ahead and hit Alt Option Enter, and that will allow us to see all of the places that we can import Scanner from. We're going to import it from java.util, and that essentially brings in all the code for this scanner inside of our program. So you could do something such as command click, and you can see all of the code that the scanner uses to work. You could go ahead and read through this. You probably won't understand much right now, but there is something behind that variable scanner, which is the scanner object. It's not just magic. You can actually go in and look at that. We're going to be inputting into these parentheses system.in. So we're going to be passing this constant into the scanner. We'll learn more on that later. Right now, just take it at face value. This is how we're going to get user input. So we need to actually cue the user on what we want them to input, right? So we can do something like we learned last week. System.out.println, something such as please enter your name. So if we run this right now, we're just going to get please enter your name on the screen, and the program is going to terminate. But we need to actually get input from the user somehow to store into our program. How we're going to do that is we're going to utilize this scanner which we created here. So let's go ahead and write scanner.next. What this is going to do is it's going to ask the scanner to take in the user input, but we're not storing that anywhere, right? We actually need to store it somewhere. So if we run it right now, it's going to ask us for our name. As you can see, the program hasn't terminated yet, so we could write something like Teves, and then all of a sudden the program ends, right? We're not storing that variable anywhere or that string that we put in anywhere. So why don't we create a string variable? We'll name the string name equals scanner.next. So string is another object. We can think of strings as words or sentences. This right here, please enter your name, is a string. We can have something such as string A equals A. This is a string. This is also a string. So strings can be a combination of words to make sentences, a single word, and it's made up of chars. So that primitive type that we talked about earlier, char A equals A. Now we can't do this because we can't have two variables as the same name, and IntelliJ is telling that, so let's change this to B. Each one of these individual characters is a char. Char is essentially short for character, so as a string is made up as a bunch of chars put together. It might be a little bit confusing right now, but as we get deeper and deeper into the course, it'll make more sense. So now we're taking a name. Let's print out that name. So now if we run this program, when we enter the name, we're going to get that name regurgitated back to us inside of the console. So instead of it terminating, it's going to print this out again. So let's go ahead and give that a try. So let's enter our name, and as you can see, it printed it out again. How cool is that? So now we can utilize this to take in more information. So why don't we copy this and paste it and ask them, please enter your favorite hobby. And now again, like I said earlier, we can't have two variables as the same name. So let's change this one to hobby. Again, let's copy this, paste this, and now let's ask them for something like a number. So we'll change this to enter your favorite number. We'll change this to number, and then we actually want to change this scanner.next. We could leave it at this, but we want to utilize our types from earlier. We're going to change this to scanner.next int. As we can recall from earlier, an int is a number. The issue is this is yelling at us and it's telling us we can't do this. Can you think of why? I'll give you a second to think about that. You can go ahead and pause the video. Cool. So if you guess that we can't store an int in a string variable, you would be correct. So what we actually need to do here is change this to an int. And it will allow us to store this int inside of an int variable. If we look here, we had the red line, and if we hover over it, it'll actually tell us what's wrong. So as you can see here, required type string provided int. So what that's saying is this is instantiating a string, and you're trying to store an int inside of this string. But because we know that we actually want an int, we can go ahead and change this to int. Great. So for the last thing, let's ask one more question. Oh no. So it looks like we did something wrong. We can't resolve symbol favorite. Now this might be a little bit confusing, but if you recall to our last video, we need to actually input this as something. This is just, IntelliJ doesn't know what to do with this. Java doesn't know what to do with this. We need to input something that it can understand. So if we look above, we're inputting a string into this method, the system.out.println method. It looks like we actually just forgot to make this a string. Cool, now we're good. Now down here, again, we're going to be taking in a string. We're going to name this favorite. And then if you remember from the last video, we want to camel case this, favorite app equals scanner.next. Great. So now if we run this, it should ask us for all of these variables, but we're not doing anything with these variables yet. So we can input these all in. Please enter your favorite hobby. Your favorite number, will say 23. And your favorite app, YouTube. And the program terminated. So we actually want to do something with all of these variables that we're storing inside of memory. So let's go ahead and create our MadLib. Let's do something like system.out.println, and let's say, hello, my name is, and then how we're going to input this is we're going to use a plus operator and put name here. So what this is going to do is it's going to print hello, my name is, and then we're going to concatenate name onto this string. So essentially what the Java program is going to do is it's going to print out hello, my name is, and then it's going to see that we have a plus operator here, and it's going to add name to that. Now name, if we look up here, is set to whatever the user inputs. So if we have something like Teves here, this will print out, hello, my name is Teves. Now we want to make sure we put a space here because it's going to concatenate that onto the end of this first string. So if we forget this, it's actually going to look a little weird. Let's go ahead and run it just so you can see. We'll say programming 43 YouTube. So that doesn't look too good, right? Hello, my name is Teves. One word. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure we put our space in there. So let's do the same thing again. We'll say my favorite. Ooh, we need those quotes. My favorite thing to do is space. And now we need to add our favorite hobby here. So as you can see, number and favorite app are still grayed out, but name and hobby are not. This is a quick IntelliJ lesson. That essentially means that we are using hobby and name somewhere, and we are not using number or favorite app anywhere yet. So as we continue to write, these will turn white as well from gray. We'll do something like system.out.print line. Oh, and looks like we forgot our print line here. Let's go ahead and add that in. I think learning how to program is really cool. Don't forget the semicolon at the end. Let's do another one. I want to practice programming for 12 hours a day. So that's not really going to work for us, right? Let's use our favorite number here instead of 12. So how could you think that we could insert that number that the user puts in into this string? Go ahead and pause the video for a second and think about that. Cool, so I'm actually going to show you how to do this now. So what we want to do is replace this 12 with what the user inputs as their favorite number. So let's delete this, and we want to end this string. We're going to then use a plus operator, add our favorite number, and then do another plus, and then add our quotes right here. So what this will do is it'll print, I want to practice programming for, it'll look for this number up here, it'll get whatever the user stored inside here, concatenate that onto the string here, and then see that we have another string and print hours a day. Again, let's not forget the space so we can continue this as a valid sentence. We don't want to print I want to practice programming for space number and then add hours directly after whatever number they input a day. We want to make it look like a correct sentence. Great, so let's finish it up now with our favorite app. Great. So now what this will do, let's think about it before we actually run it. We're going to be creating our scanner. We're then going to be asking the user for their name. We're going to be using the scanner to get the next thing that the user inputs and store it into name. We're then going to be using the same print method to ask for their favorite hobby. Again, get the next input that the user puts in, stored into hobby. Again, prompt the user for a number, get the next number that the user inputs, and store it into number. And then again, finally, ask the user for the next string and input that into our favorite app. So now we will have 4 variables that have 4 pieces of data inside them. Now we're going to go through and print out all these pieces of data with something that we have already written. So it will be different every single time the user inputs different data. So we're going to go through and print, hello, my name is, whatever the user inputs. My favorite thing to do is whatever the user inputs. I think learning how to program is really cool. I want to practice programming for the user's favorite number plus hours a day. One day I'll be able to build an app just like, and then the user's favorite app. So let's go ahead and run this and give it a try, see if it works. So please enter your name, enter your favorite hobby. Let's enter our favorite number and our favorite app. And then look at this. Hello, my name is Teves. My favorite thing to do is hiking. I think learning how to program is really cool. I want to practice programming for 23 hours a day. And one day I'll be able to build an app just like YouTube. Great. So now we've actually learned a little bit about primitive types, a very small amount of objects, such as the scanner and string. We also learned how to store data inside of Java, instantiating a variable, giving it a name, and then setting it equal to something. We also learned how to pull out variables and use them. So such as the favorite app variable, we're using this to print it out with this string. Great. So why don't you go and make your own MadLib? What could you use storing variables for? Well, I'm going to tell you, pretty much every single program you are going to write is going to store variables. Let me know if you have any questions. Go ahead and comment down below. If you thought this video was helpful, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe. We're going to be releasing new videos every single week and hopefully making you a better Java programmer, one video at a time. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.